Meet David Shulkin, net worth $17 million. He was appointed as the Undersecretary of Veteran Affairs for Health in 2015 by President Obama. He became the Chief Medical Officer of the VA, responsible for patient care and medical personnel recruitment and retention. But during his time as Undersecretary, the VA wait times to see doctors grew longer, and the Veterans Choice Program continued to experience major problems. Despite his lackluster performance as Undersecretary, President Trump nominated him to be Secretary of Veteran Affairs, and he was confirmed by the Senate in February of 2017. With tens of thousands of veterans dying, waiting to see a doctor and receive treatment, and with whistleblowers across the VA reporting on poor patient care, the VA has received a lot of criticism from all sectors. Immediately upon taking over as Secretary, Shulkin put up a firewall, demanded that this criticism end. And although rarely a couple weeks go by without another report of patient abuse or neglect at one of the VA facilities, Secretary Shulkin insists that there's no problem with his VA employees. He actually stated that they are the best in the healthcare field. Well, let's take a look at these claims. How about VA building cost overruns? The unfinished Aurora VA hospital went from $560 million to $1.7 billion, and they now claim they need $830 million more to complete it, taking it to over $2.5 billion, and that's over $9 million per hospital bed. But that isn't the only problem spot for Shulkin's VA. In Orlando, the VA hospital is $350 million over budget. In Las Vegas, they're over by $260 million. And in New Orleans, they're over by $370 million. And in case you missed it, that's another $1 billion the VA has squandered, and they want to make up for it by cutting veteran benefits and care. While Secretary Shulkin was Chief Medical Officer for the VA under President Obama, the VA hospital just a few blocks from his office was audited and found to be mismanaged and filthy. This hospital serves 100,000 veterans in the D.C. area. The operating room at the hospital ran out of vascular patches to seal blood vessels. The facility had to borrow bone material for knee replacement surgeries, and at one point the hospital ran out of tubes needed for kidney dialysis. Investigators also inspected 25 sterile storage areas and found 18 were dirty. Secretary Shulkin assured everyone that there was no record of any veterans being harmed by this environment. During Secretary Shulkin's second year with the VA as Undersecretary, Congress added $10 billion to the budget to set up the Veterans Choice Program in order to expedite services for veterans. The VA fumbled this ball, and waiting periods for treatment actually increased. Now, one of the main duties of the VA Chief Medical Officer is to oversee the programs for recruitment of medical personnel. And even though billions of extra dollars were being poured into the VA, Shulkin failed miserably at this task, causing the physician shortage to continue and even longer waiting periods for vets to see a doctor. Well, remember how sensitive Secretary Shulkin was of criticism of the VA? Well, his department came down hard on a couple for exposing negligence at a VA emergency room when they posted photos detailing the problem. No consequences for negligence at the VA, just for reporting it. VA chief administrators in 7 states were caught falsifying vet wait times since Shulkin became secretary. Just this week, Senator Chuck Grassley accused VA facilities in Iowa of lying about their wait times. And under Secretary Shulkin, the VA has adjusted their accounting methods for calculating these wait times, whitewashing the reality veterans still face getting treatment. And if all that wasn't bad enough, the VA is allowing veterans' corpses to rot in their morgues awaiting burial, many of them Vietnam veterans. Well, during his confirmation hearing, Shulkin assured the senators that he was not going to make any radical changes to the VA. He was just going to work with what he had and improve on it. Barely 3 months later, he announced he wants to close over 1,000 VA facilities. Imagine how that will affect wait times and treatment availability. Remember the $10 billion Congress infused into the VA budget 3 years ago to get the Veterans Choice Program up and running? Well, it's finally starting to work for vets across the country. Now, it still isn't perfect, but certainly no worse than many of the local VA facilities. Well, Secretary Shulkin wants to pull it up by its roots. He denies this, but that's exactly what he's doing. He wants vets to have to return to the VA every time they need treatment for something in order for one of those VA docs who don't exist to approve their care on the outside. Of course, Shulkin wants lots more money to do this, but he wants to get that money by denying veteran compensation. That's right. He's coming after elderly, disabled veterans who've been drawing individual unemployability. Once they reach Social Security eligibility, he wants to cut them loose, even though the difference in compensation for most will amount to close to $1,000 a month. These guys range in age from 62 to 80, and they've been so severely disabled they haven't been able to hold a job for years. The lion's share of them are Vietnam vets. They fought an unpopular war in a foreign country, watching their comrades leave in body bags and stretchers. Some volunteered, some were drafted, but they all served their country when asked. All they wanted was to return home in one piece and begin their lives. But some were captured by the enemy and faced torture and humiliation for years, leaving them scarred inside and out. Hundreds of thousands operated in areas sprayed by defoliant. The ones still alive suffer from a number of major problems. There are over a dozen ailments on the Agent Orange list, ranging from leukemia to Hodgkin's disease, lung and prostate cancer. Some have even passed genetic problems down to their grandchildren. But when they got back home, they faced a whole new war and social stigma as baby killers and murderers. Many to this day remain isolated from society, distrustful and alone. Remember when the nation finally came around and apologized to Vietnam vets for how we were treated? Remember how we were promised that we would never again be attacked by society or political figures? Well, someone needs to remind VA Secretary Shulkin about that promise, because it's our disability he's rating for his new programs. We're the ones being tossed off the cliff. It's clear that Secretary Shulkin doesn't care about us as much as he does his experimental treatment programs and his multi-billion-dollar budget. This multimillionaire is so far removed from the realities of disabled, aging veterans, he has no problem tossing us under the bus. Well, here's another kick in the teeth. The elderly disabled veterans affected by Shulkin's money grab got absolutely no help from any of the 14 Republican members of the Veterans Affairs Committee when Shulkin pitched his budget. Not one single question or comment about whether it was really necessary to rob 200,000 elderly disabled vets to plug holes in Shulkin's budget. 2 Democrats did speak out in opposition, but there was a stony silence from the other side of the table. Well, I have no idea how many people will watch this video, or even if any will pick up a phone and call their representatives and senators demanding they stop this raid on disabled elderly vets. Maybe it'll just be you. Or maybe we're back to the place where veterans are persona non grata and we will just become collateral damage in the VA's quest for a bigger piece of the pie. But if this video stirred anything inside you, then please consider giving it a thumbs up and sharing it with other veterans, with family members, and with friends. We all appreciate your support.